Hello, Internet. Welcome to 2.5 Brains. This is our latest discussion of the latest episode of Survivor Season 42, Episode 4. Gonna break it all down here and talk all about it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. You can like our Facebook page, facebook.com/PavementRoadProductions. You can email the show directly, pavementroadproductions@gmail.com as well. Tell us what you think about the show and subscribe. We're still looking to get some guests on here in the next couple of episodes, so hopefully we can do that soon. But in the meantime, definitely, like I said, subscribe so you don't miss anything, and comment, tell the post. We love to have, even if I'm reading your comments on the air, at least it's something else's opinion other than mine. But let's be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. We're going to dive in here, talk about the 3 moments that mattered this week. We're going to talk about who did not survive. We're going to talk about the top 3 and bottom 3 as well as we move forward to wrap up here. So, to go through this episode. So, let's go ahead and start off with 3 moments that mattered. And we'll start with moment number 1, Orange Crush. So, the Orange team, with basically Jonathan, they're calling him Hulk. They're calling him, Thor. He's definitely the biggest and strongest competitor on the show, bar none. There really is nobody who's even really close, and they have a good team. Lindsay does a good job. Marianne has her strengths, and Omer's pretty good. He's good at the puzzles and that kind of stuff. So they have a solid team. And I just remember saying in my last podcast, there's no team who's out front, that much. And they're pretty competitive, and that's true. Unlike last season where the blue team was always winning, then it'd be like, all right, who's going to finish second, yellow or green? And being green a lot. Getting down to only 2 players left. This one has at least Orange lost. They lost somebody and then they lost a challenge, and they had to vote somebody out. And then Blue lost now 2 people, and and so on and so forth. But and obviously each team has had some issues and whatever. If they've lost a player or 2. But this one, Orange has been just dominated. The reward challenge we had this episode was just. It wasn't even close. They were done with the challenge before most anybody even got on the course. Like it was crazy, and Green did their best too, but again, just overmatched completely. And then we had, it was very interesting because I said, there were people who were sitting out and were watching, whatever. They're like, "Wow, how they could do that fast?" And they said Jonathan did it all, which, is maybe. True. They definitely have a good balance of players, and they can't send anybody out because they have only 4 players, so they all have to participate. So that they're all contributing. It's been a very, very dominant job for them, even though it didn't seem that way for initially, because they said they lost somebody getting pulled, and then at the second episode they vote out Mariah, right? So it's like, okay, they lose about Mariah. But, and even that was close, but overall, it seems like there's been a lot of close challenges, but this episode wasn't at all. Orange team blew out the first one, and then the second one, it was relatively close, but they pulled away, and they were first place as well. So the Orange team has really, really gotten it going, and I said it puts a target on Jonathan, for sure, which we'll talk about here coming up, but also, the other player that remembers the Orange team, it's like, what do we do now? Do we lose on purpose? Maybe they lose right for the merge to get rid of Jonathan, so he's not a threat, and whatever, because nobody's probably gonna want to work with them after the merge. If the 3 teams come together, the blue and the green are probably gonna work together instead of the orange, because the orange, they know they have Jonathan, he's gonna dominate the challenges, and they want to get rid of him. So it's gonna be tough. I think it'd be good to have a swap, of some kind here, maybe next week, which they haven't really seemed like they wanted to do. Or so they didn't do the summit this week, which is fine. The summit's a waste of time. But at least if you have, let the players interact a little, they can build up bonds or whatever. So, I don't know. We'll see. But I don't love that. I don't love that at all. So, but either way, the Orange team definitely is doing a really good job. They've definitely been dominating. And the Orange Crush has been definitely a thing this week, this episode for sure. And it's been really building towards the last couple episodes, because it's been, this team's really gotten it going, and they're really hitting all the strides. And Jonathan said all the right things, says we're all working together as a team, blah blah blah, which also isn't that's the best thing to say, but it's taking some blame off of him and passing around the credit. I guess it takes some of the credit and some of the target of him, passes it around to everybody else. but also when everybody else hears they're a very good cohesive team, that makes them not want to work with them either, because now they're, it's a void block of 4, so the best thing they can do is start throwing each other on the bus and, seem very dysfunctional, maybe lose a challenge or two. I don't know. But either way, so that is the Orange Crush. So as far as moment number 2, I went with information overload. So this one is, again, it's been a recurring theme for the last few seasons, especially really, Ben's season and maybe even a little before then. Is information is currency, right? I mean, they introduced the fire token as a currency that, in season 40, which is interesting. But I mean, I don't know. Everybody has information. Instead of using it to leverage it to get something out of it, they're mostly just throwing everybody's information out there, right? I mean, Tori talked about Drea having an extra vote because Rocksroy said, "Hey, I wonder if they get into the summit." And Tori's like, "Wait, you don't know that Tori has an extra vote? I thought you guys were close." And that kind of put a wedge between them a little bit, which, at least Tori got something out of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I guess. But the fact is, everybody knows there's all this information out there. I mean, all these different advantages, extra votes. Nobody really knows about the little advantages they got on day one. The 3 pillars got on day one. Those kinds of things. But it's been a crazy, so much information out there. People don't know each other. People know each other's information, and you're almost better off knowing. You're almost better off not knowing everything, or you're almost better off not having anything but knowing everything. If you know all the everything is, you can kind of work around it. Because at this point, if somebody's telling me, "Hey, I'll give you all an all-knowing advantage where I know everything, all the information, all that," if somebody's gonna tell me, "I'll give you that," I'll tell you everything you need to know, versus I'm going to give you an advantage. I want the information at this point, right? I'd rather have the information of who has what, and we can figure it out from there. Because it's way easier to navigate the minefield than to, have to, I'll have this advantage, but I don't know what anybody else has. Well, if you have an advantage, it may not even be good, because somebody else has, an idle nullifier, and they know you have it, you have an idle, or, if they have, an extra vote, and you have, you can have, an idle, but they're going to still split on you and your ally anyways. So there's things like that where information is power in this game, and knowing what information is available is I think way more beneficial than actually having the advantage yourself. Sure, you want an idle about that, but an idle really, in theory, only gets you 1 vote unless you play it really, really well. Maybe it gives you 2 votes, through 2 votes, but an idle is not going to do much for you. I mean, it saves you 1 vote, but I'd rather have knowledge and allies all day. It's way better to have knowledge and allies, because an ally can get you through many votes, where an idle can only get you through 1 vote. So information, it's currency, and people always, they're so excited to tell everybody. Like, said, Marianne telling everybody about her advantage, and Tori telling everybody about Drea's advantage, and Swati telling everybody about. And it's just like, there's information is so important. It's so important, to know. If the more you know, the better off you're gonna be in the game. The more knowledge you have, the better you're gonna be in the game. And if you're gonna trade that information, you better get something in return. Some people are just so excited to tell what happened and tell something about it. If you're gonna give up somebody else's information that they gave you, well, that's gonna cost you something. It's probably gonna cost you that relationship with that person. If you're gonna give up your own information about something you have, well, you better be getting something that's worth at least that in return. If nobody knows what you have, it's I think it's still ultimately best for nobody to know what you have. And Marianne twice had to say her phrase. People are gonna be like, okay, she has it, and and once things get out there, Mike knows that Marianne has it, because he's heard the phrases. But nobody from the blue team seemed to have found it, though. So, and it's hard when you have to have these 3-way shared idle, 3-way shared advantages, all that stuff. But I do really think it's best to, if you're gonna have information, use it for something. Get something in return for it. If it's your own advantage, if it's somebody else's advantage, somebody else's information, don't give it away for nothing. Make that an investment. So much information flying around. It's so hard. And like I said, and Marianne, really at this point, she needs to wait for somebody else to say it. Somebody else say the phrase. If she just says the same phrase every week, people are like, what's wrong with this girl? And Mike is maybe not as intentionally playing it smart, but he's playing it smart. If somebody else, he doesn't need to say the phrase. If somebody else says the phrase, then somebody else says the other phrase, then he'll say the phrase because he knows. But I don't know. I really think it's a. I think the information is so many players are just so excited and eager. And that's I think kind of what I talked about last episode too. Last show is there's so many players who are the first time they're doing this for the first time. They're going and trying to just have fun with it, and they're just eager to play, eager to make a move, eager to there's an advantage. I'm going to take advantage. I'm going to grab this advantage and go do. I think the best thing you can do is just kind of nothing for a while. I've said for a while the best thing you can do on Survivor right now is sleep the first 5 votes. Sleep through the pre-merge. Obviously, make relationships and friendships, but don't make any moves. Don't do anything. No moves at all. Just glom onto a group and hang on to that group for the first couple of weeks. Obviously, the shorter season, it's a little different, but same idea. First 4 or 5 rounds, just do what everybody says to do. Make good bonds. If there's a swap, get a favorable position in that swap by making good connections, and then when you get closer to the merge, you can start making moves. Because no one really cares what you did pre-merge, so it's better to just kind of wait and just survive until then. Survive in advance until you get to close to the merge or into the post-merge area. So after that, let's go to number 3, which is Damage Daniel, or Damage Control Daniel even, because he came back from travel and said, I don't really want to talk about too much. I want to kind of talk about more in the morning, but blah, 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 here's what happened. And it wasn't too good. I mean, he threw Chanel under the bus, which is why? I still don't get why he threw Chanel under the bus. I don't understand the logic behind that. And then he told Mike some information, and then he told and then Hai and Lydia were talking, and I just don't think anybody trusts him now. And they said they're gonna bring Hai and Lydia are gonna go bring Mike in. All right, so now Mike's going to be on their side. Now that Chanel and then we're on the bottom. Chanel and Daniel were on the top. Now they're on the bottom. It's just why did I don't know why Daniel couldn't have made a smarter decision. He said, Chanel wanted to take out Lydia, and it's true. But I mean, if that's the whole reason you're Chanel wanted to get rid of Lydia, and I didn't want to. Okay, well then he said, I made a bad decision with an alliance partner. I don't understand how you draw that conclusion. I don't know how you get to that conclusion. She had your back. You stabbed her in the back, and then she got mad at you. Well, yeah, you stabbed her in the back, and you didn't want to throw out a name, so she would throw out a name. You agreed to it because you didn't want to go against that. Okay, but you just burned your ally in front of everybody. That's not going to get you too far in the game. So, really bad job by Daniel. At least Chanel and they started kind of fighting. Chanel kind of just slid in the background, and it's feeling nobody's talking about her now, and nobody seems to be talking about Chanel. Everybody's mad at Daniel, which is because he, and Chanel said, well, I didn't, Chanel kind of said, well, I didn't know why, you threw my name out there, blah blah blah, he kind of get it back to him a little bit, and then he started fighting with everybody else, and she's like, all right, well, I said my piece, and she just kind of went back in the background. And it was, I think she's still on the bottom. I think Daniel's still the target at this point. And especially if we go to a merge or swap, he's been sending out a lot of the challenges anyways because his shoulder has been hurting. So I really think at this point, Daniel's digging himself a grave. He really is. He's not making any friends. He's a snake. And they've seen that. And they said, no, there's a two-headed snake. It's Chanel and Daniel, but they're both going different directions. Right? They're both trying different approaches. And I think Chanel's lurking because she's kind of sliding in the background. We'll see what happens, but I mean, ultimately, Daniel's damage control is not great. I thought maybe he'd come back and he'd be like, oh, sorry, Chanel, I was just in the heat of the moment, whatever. But I mean, you burn an ally like that, especially in a tribe of 5 people. So now the best you can do is have a tribe is group up with 2 other people not named Chanel. So you have your options now are you need two of the three. You need Mike, Hai, and Lydia. Well, you just voted for Lydia, and then you saved her. You've been kind of up and back and forth with Mike. I don't know who's all going to want to work with you. So you might be desperate for a swap, and then turn on his old tribe. But that's again, you're just burning too many people in the game. A lot of times the best moves you can make are the moves that burn the fewest amount of people. Right? If you're going to vote out somebody, it's like even if you have a number one ally, but if you want to vote out that number one ally, well, guess what? Maybe you vote out the person. Maybe you vote that ally out because you're not pissing that person's out of the game. You're not pissing them off because they're out of the game, right? As opposed to you vote the person who has two other allies in the game. Well, now you're pissing off those two people, and so he's really isolating himself. And I was really feeling good about it. The way he started off really strong first episode, and then since the last two episodes have been really bad. Not a good job. And his damage control has been not good, and he's maybe it's making things worse. So, not a good week for him. Talk about that maybe more a little bit coming up here. So let's talk about who did not survive this week. So this week we had another tribal council, and the blue team lost again. So they lost the first community challenge. Zach was voted out, and the Skinny Guys Alliance, and everything like that. One of the younger people, the three younger people, they voted out the younger person. And so the blue team lost again here, and it was looking like Tori. Everybody was ready to go for Tori. And Tori said, well, I'm not going to go down without a fight. So she started talking to Drea about how she told Roxroy that Drea had an extra vote that she didn't tell him about, right? And so and Tori was mad about it, or Drea was mad about it because Drea's like, I want to work with her. I want to do an all girls thing. And the three of us, the girls were going to stick together, and we were going to vote out, one of the guys. Maybe Roxroy. But Tori, is running her mouth. So basically what happened was Tori went to Roxroy and said, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I heard the information about Drea from Swati. Because, the two of them were the only two left from their original alliance, and Tori figured one of them's going, so she got to survive one more vote. So she said Swati is the one who kind of gave her the information and said that, it kind of put that bug in. I guess maybe it was even Romeo's ear. I really don't remember. But she put it in somebody's ear, and then they're like, well, she said the same thing to me about being my number one. And Drea said, she said the same thing to me about being my number one. Tori said, she said the same thing to me about being my number one. They show the clips, and she's basically using the same phrase, everybody. Almost the same exact words. And they're like, wow, I thought she was just this quiet girl who's just here to have an adventure. I didn't realize she was playing this game so hard. They said, well, she became a way bigger threat now. So they started talking about it, and ultimately it came down to, well, do we trust Swati or do we trust Tori? Right? And the answer is clearly neither. But I think the group made the wrong decision because, like I was saying during the episode, I was like, when you're voting here, somebody tries to make the mistake of they burned me recently, so I gotta get rid of them, or I don't trust them now. Well, did you ever trust Tori? Because Tori is telling you what you want to hear, and granted, maybe this information she has today is true. Maybe the information she had about but it's like Swati's telling everybody that they're best friends. Tori's not, and she's not even trying, right? So it's like, well, why don't we get rid of Tori, because at least Swati will have nowhere else to go. She thinks she's lying with all of us, and Tori isn't. Like Tori doesn't really even pretend to be aligned with us. And it annoys them that because they didn't. Tori was not being straight up or whatever, and so she threw out all this information about Swati to kind of get Swati people to turn on her, and it worked. But again, I just don't think it was a smart move. I don't think it was the right move to make because Tori doesn't seem to have any allegiance to anybody. She's just saying what you want to hear. And again, what she was saying in this case was probably true. That Swati gave the information about Tori or about Drea and everything like that, and and Swati's playing both sides, which she is. But if you cut out the other side, there is no both sides, right? I mean, instead of getting rid, because now you're rid of Swati. Who's more likely to flip the merge, Swati or Tori? Yes, Swati's been lying to you, but Tori is not even trying to be lying with you. Like Swati's, playing it cool and playing both sides, where Tori's, the enemy. I guess the enemy so you're keeping her around. But if you go to a merge, Tori has a 100% chance of swapping against you, whereas Swati has a maybe a 50% chance of swapping against you. I'd rather the person who I can maybe keep at arm's length. I mean, put it this way: you go on that trap house, you vote out either Tori or you vote out Swati next time, anyways, right? But having Swati with you, if you go to a merge or a swap, it's possible she'll still work with you. Tori is not. So why not get rid of the person who's not going to work with you, and Tori, and keep Swati in case and then you can keep you can't really trust her, but you can just keep her at a distance. You have her around, and she starts getting goofier, or you think she's gonna flip on you, then you get rid of her then, right? But Tori, is not going to work with you. So I would much rather have the person who I have a chance to work with, and keep them at arm's length unless they prove they're worthy of coming in closer, as opposed to somebody who I know I'm not going to work with at all and I can't trust at all. And so many times the players I heard they get new information on somebody and they want to get rid of them right away. It's like the smarter move is to maybe hang on to them, try to bring them back in, and then if you can't, then get rid of them. Because Tori will say the same thing about Roxroy, she'll say the same thing about Drea. She doesn't care. She's trying to save herself. She knows she's on the bottom, and the fact that you let her escape again is a problem. I mean, she's been on the block twice, and they have decided not to get rid of her either time. And in fact, both times she's been on the block, she got one vote, and this was from Roxroy. So, Swati got manipulated for sure. She was definitely seeming like a quieter person, and that's kind of what she said. But the only thing I would say Swati did wrong is A, saying the same exact phrase to other people, getting caught. But B, if somebody comes out and accuses you, don't just back down. Because if they're the loudest voice, they're making arguments, you got to stand up and fight for yourself. You got to be like, no, that's not what happened. She's just saying that because she wants to save herself. I'm with you guys. I've been with you guys from the beginning. I don't know what she's talking about. Or again, something like, when we were talking earlier, or go to Drea and say, when we're talking about doing a girls thing, we were all talking. I wasn't really sure which way we were going to go, so I thought maybe we were going to keep Tori. But if the four of us are still together, well that's fine. We don't need Tori. But I was trying to keep that relationship going in case the three girls want to stick together, and that's all you got to do. I mean, it's it's an easy explanation. Hey, I was afraid that the three girls were gonna be a thing, so I want to keep Tori in the loop in case we did that. But I'm with you guys. I'm with you, and then whichever you and I want to go, we can go. And that's what she should have done with Drea, or throwing Tori on the bus that Tori's lying. She's just trying to save herself. I mean, any of those things would have been fine. But instead, she basically let Tori control the narrative. Tori said what was happening, and Drea and Swati didn't fight back against it. She's like, oh, okay. And she's naive, and she's learned a lot, she's grown, but she's, again, a college student who's 20 years old. I don't think she has a ton of life experience. It's not like she's been through, through hell, in her life. She had a pretty simple upbringing, I'm assuming, an Indian American, whatever, but, isn't like like she was in a really difficult situation growing up or anything. And she's a college student, so her whole basically her whole life she knows has been schooling, which is great, but doesn't have great communication skills, wasn't a very social player, and didn't have a ton of fight. And that's really tough to see. It's kind of how Krishma was, right? When Krishma, on her season, the first real, the first time they really casted, obviously Natalie Anderson and all that, but, they really started casting, people of that archetype, I guess you could say. And, same thing. Nazir was similar last year in a similar way. But yeah, I mean, it's not, you hate to see that, it's like, I was a fan of the Apprentice, right, back in the day, and they said one of the worst things you do is when you're on the chopping block in the boardroom is not fight. Like, even if they'd rather you have you be somebody who's a jerk and making loud noise and being annoying and being ruthless and pissing everybody off than just sitting there and taking it. And that's unfortunate what Swati did. She just kind of took it, and she has military experience, so I can't say she doesn't have any life experience. But in the military too, all the times you're told to follow orders, And I feel like she was just kind of a soldier following orders, doing what she was told to do. And then when it was time for her to stand up fight for herself, she didn't have the ability or desire to do so. So that's unfortunately, I think, what happened for Swati, and that's why she lost today. Let's go ahead now and talk about the top 3 and bottom 3. So let's go ahead and talk about the bottom 3 this week. We'll start with Daniel here at the bottom 3. Obviously, he's going to be the bottom 3. Again, damage control, everything like that. When you come back, it's one of the things, too. It's kind of difficult because, I remember when Zeke and Hannah and all that, and Hannah flipped on the one group of millennials, Gen X, and she flipped on the one group of millennials and voted out Mari. And Zeke and them were all upset, and Zeke, I think it was Zeke and Adam, they were upset, and they're like, well, why did you do that? You just, it was the cool kids versus the nerds. The nerds had the numbers, and you just flipped it on the nerds to be with the cool kids, and why did you do that? And they're all upset, and she's like, let me explain, and they're like, we don't want to explain, we just want to relax right now, and process this, and we'll talk to you in the morning. She goes, yeah, but let me explain right now. And they're like, no, just shut up and go away. She's like, but I want to explain. And it was like, oh my god, and it's one of those things where you have to understand how people want to be communicated to. And the problem for sure for Daniel was he just kept, he said, I don't want to talk about it right now. I just want to, say my piece and I'll go to bed and we'll talk about it more tomorrow. But then but that's not, if people want to talk to you now, they're going to talk to you now. Like, especially if you're the one who messed up, right? If you're the one who messed up, listen more than you talk. If you're the one who messed up, listen, take it in, and understand, and then talk. But that's not what they were doing. That's not what Daniel was doing at all. He just kept pushing it, and he's like, well, I don't want to talk about it right now, blah, blah. And they kept bringing it up because they wanted to talk about it because it was raw, and they wanted to get their, if you mess up, that you got to take them yelling at you. If you mess up, you have to own that, And he wanted to kind of just brush it off and hey, we'll talk about more tomorrow. And they figured they'd sleep on it, and they wouldn't be so emotional, or whatever, and they'd be fine. But everybody has their everybody has the right to do what they got to do. If you make them mad, they're gonna And Hai was mad at him for kind of playing both sides and voting against him initially, and then he flipped over. But it didn't seem like, again, if you come back, the first thing you do is you go to the side, you go to the side that you flipped to, and shore things up with them. Instead of making a public apology, the public apologies are never really good. Public statements in Survivor are really bad. They almost never work out. In this case, it didn't either. He's instead of saying or going to Chanel and say, hey, sorry about that. I was just trying something that didn't really work. Blah blah blah. And I'm taking that individually. The lazy thing to do is say, all right, I'm sorry. I'll talk about it in the morning. I just want to apologize now. I'm going to go to bed. The thing that actually builds relationships and keeps you in the game is going to the people in pairs or in whatever, and saying, hey, here's what I'm thinking. You go to Mike individually, go to Chanel individually, and go to Hai and Lydia as a group, whatever. That would probably be the better way to go. But instead, they just decided not to. He decided just to kind of throw it all out there, and then start an issue. And I said, if you just throw it out there, and then if you're gonna do that, you gotta kind of do what Chanel did. Chanel just kind of threw out a little bit, of what was going on. Kind of threw her 2 cents in, and kind of let everybody else fight. Let Daniel fight with Mike, and Daniel fight with Hai, and they were kind of going back and forth and bickering. And that would have been the best. That's if you're gonna do that, that's the way to do it, because at least they're gonna fight with each other, and you can kind of slip back in the background, and that's it. But Daniel did the worst of both worlds. He tried to slip in the background, by making a public statement, and it was the tension was high anyways. So there was really no reason to do that. So Daniel's in the bottom 3 this week for sure. And now for number 2 on the bottom list, I'm going to go with... This one was tough too. I'm going to go with Jonathan here again, just because, he's on the top, he's on the bottom. But again, they are pointing to him as like the reason the tribe's winning. So it's making him a huge threat. And then he said, we're a very cohesive group. We're working really well together as a team. And, that was not, he tried to compliment his team, which is smart in real life. But in Survivor, it's bad, because not only do you make yourself a threat, instead of, he didn't lower his own threat level, he just made other people look like threats as well. What he should have done is said, oh, hey, I'm just one person here. There's more than one good player on this team. And instead of talking about how close they are, because people aren't going to want to work with a close group before. They're not going to work with a close group of 4. And they're not going to work with the big challenge threat because they were going to get rid of him. They're being afraid of easy win challenges. So that's what I think he should have done. Just been like, hey, yeah, I'm just one person. There's certain challenges I'm good at, but I'm just one person. And this tribe has a lot of good people. But instead he took the compliment and spread it around, which is a good thing to do, but it could cause problems. And I think it definitely is for him right now. So we'll see. He definitely needs to lower his threat level before the merge. I definitely see him. I have him 11th on my roster or my power rankings, and I think that's probably where he's gonna end up. I have Swati in 10th. Again, other people. It's been. I had one person go out early who I thought was gonna go deep. I had 2 people go out. I guess 3 people go out kind of early who I thought were going to go out early. And I've had 2 people go in the middle of the pack who I thought were going to go out, middle of the pack, or who got early I thought were in the middle of the pack. So we'll see how it goes. But I think right now the problem is, for Jonathan, he's setting himself up so well to be a very likable merge boot. And I don't see any really other path for him right now. I mean, unless he can either win all the challenges or somehow find a couple advantages or idols, and he's got Omer to keep him safe there, which is great. But I really worry, for Omer too, that he's gonna have to make a decision here. Can I keep Jonathan and be a threat by association with him, or do I cut him and lower my threat level? But then again, cutting him, turning on your ally might make you a bigger threat. So it's a really tough spot to be in, and Jonathan's not helping in this case. I made him a top player before because he's been super strong in the challenge and like that, and week to week he's really, really a strong player. But long-term winnability is really not good for Jonathan because of that, because he's such a big threat. So that's why I have him here. For the third player that's in the bottom 3, I have Roxroy. Roxroy, again, just annoying people. He's very, everything is his way. He wants everything done his way. He's very, very narcissistic. And he voted for Tori this week, even though, the rest of his tribe voted for Swati. And voting for Tori is, Tori came to with information about Drea and everything like that. And he's like, yeah, he's kind of saw through it. Like, yeah, she's just playing this game. She's, I don't trust her, blah, blah, blah. Which is smart. But he's not. I mean, his own alliances are kind of like I think Drea would drop him immediately. I think if Tori and Swati would have played it better, Roxroy goes out today instead, because Tori and Swati can be like, hey Drea, let's bring it in, let's do a girls thing, and Roxroy, and it's like, Drea, you pick who you want, and I'm sure she would have really taken out Roxroy and kept Romeo. Because Roxroy's been annoying her, and he's been the drill sergeant and like that. And Tori, being a therapist, one thing I would have kind of liked to have seen is, they said, oh, he's she tells people in relationships, if they're in relationships with a narcissist, get out of the relationship. And that's true in a relationship, but on Survivor, knowing that about a person, there's not a lot of nuance to Roxroy. He's not a very complicated guy. He's a narcissist. He likes to do things his way. He likes people that look up to him, like people kiss his ass. So if you kiss his ass, he'll be loyal to you. Just tell him what he wants to hear and schmooze him. Stroke his ego. I remember when it wasn't exactly the same thing, but when Tyson and Iris were together on Blood versus Water, right? Everything that Iris did, Tyson was like, wow, look how great Iris is, everybody. And Iris was, was kind of flattered that Tyson was saying such nice things about him. When it came down to, all right, now we need to divide the tribe, and who are we going to vote out, Tyson or Iris? Everybody wanted to side with Tyson and vote Iris because he'd been planting those seeds, right? So I mean, it's Philip Shepard the same way. Everybody thinks Philip's crazy, and Philip's a nutcase. Well, Boston Rob was telling Philip how great he was. So who is Philip loyal to? Everybody who thinks he's terrible. Everybody thinks he's an egotistical maniac who's crazy, or the one who thinks he's great. And Rob probably didn't think he was great, but he told him what he wanted to hear. And that's ultimately the best thing you gotta do. And so the fact that A, that Tori and them didn't do that, and B, that he's so obvious, it's so obvious how to control him and give him and manipulate him, it looks bad for both of them. But I'm gonna give the lower, I'm gonna put Roxroy here in this bottom spot here because of that, because he is so easily manipulated based on how his personality is. So let's talk about the top 3 now for this week. And for the third spot in the top 3, I'm going to go with Tori. Obviously, I mean, it's hard to put her there because she's not been doing well. I mean, she's barely hanging on. I mean, probably isn't going to have a great result this season. I doubt that she's going to win at this point. I mean, I kind of put her somewhat middle of the pack anyways, I guess. I think I had her like 10th or 11th maybe, but maybe 9th. But either way, I mean, the whole thing is she's not she's not in a very good spot. She's not been, they lose another challenge. I can't imagine she survives the vote. That being said, she's really scrappy, and I really like that. I mean, she found a way to hang on, found a way to turn the table. She was dead to rights. I mean, 2 votes in a row. She seemed like she was going to be voted out unanimously, and got a total of 1 vote in both of those. So she's finding a way to fight and hang on, and she's a scrappy player. And I gotta imagine they're going to get rid of her soon, and I can't imagine she survives too many more votes, but. She's fighting, and you gotta give her credit for that. Not a lot of players do. Some players said Schwade kind of rolled over and took it, whereas Tori fought and fights, and she's making moves, she's manipulating, and that kind of thing. And like I said, I mean, I would like to sit here kind of get with Roxroy and use his ego against him. I would like to see her somebody who's a therapist and kind of someone able to manipulate that kind of thing. I'd love to see her do it. Obviously, I think therapists have really, someone who's in that kind of field has really good advantage in the game, and maybe that's why she's still in it, because she probably should have been out very, very early. But she survived, so, I mean, good for her. And I got to put her in the top 3 at least for this week because of that. Again, if they lose another tribal council, they have another vote. I can't imagine she makes it through another vote in the current setup that they're in. Maybe they won't swap. I'd love to see them swap at least once, but maybe they won't. I think maybe she's not for nothing, but I remember in the preview of the season they had a female reading the sentences. You had to read the phrase on the when you get the idol, and I remember the only one they haven't read yet is the one about the potato being are you a potato, and and she read that, and they had a female reading the phrase. Well, that potato one's obviously on the blue tribe because they're the only ones that haven't found it yet, and they did have a female reading that clue. So it didn't. Again, I don't know if it was Tori. I don't know if it doesn't sound like Drea. It didn't necessarily sound like Tori either. It might have been something they just put in, right? And just anybody reading it just for the heck of it. For the trailer, and it wasn't actually something from the season. But if it's the case, then Tori finds out, the third one to read it, and reads and gets the immunity idol, blah, blah, blah. So who knows, But again, I think she's scrappy, she's fighting, she's trying, she's looking for idols, which kind of got her in trouble early on. So I think if anybody's from the tribe's going to find it, I think it's going to be her. And then she reads the phrase. When everybody else reads their goofy phrase, she will know that everybody else has read their phrase, and we'll be able to say hers, and everybody else will say theirs, and it'll be wonderful. But again, I don't. It's one of those players who you can definitely root for because they're scrappy, they fight, they're kind of the underdog, in their tribe. I don't know if she's the most likable player ever, whatever, but she's scrappy. Again, I'll say that again, and that's one thing that a lot of people really, a lot of fans really really like about that. So I'll have her in the top 3 right now. As for the second one in the top 3, I'm going to go with Drea here. I don't think she made the right decision. I think she should have got rid of Tori. I don't think Schwatze is as big of a threat as Tori. Again, Tori can manipulate. Tori is much more of a player. They were just, I think, offended that Schwatze kind of turned on them and didn't, kind of went against them. And I think that was a bad decision. I think that was a bad call to do that. I think they should have just, let it go. I think Schwatze's not going to get people, not going to win people over and have them, create a new alliance or anything like that. I don't think that's something that Schwatze was going to do. Tori could do that. So I think they made the wrong decision, and they should have voted out, Tori in this case. I think that would have been the better decision for their game and going forward long term. Swathi, who had some allegiance as opposed to Tori, who really doesn't have any. That being said, other things that I think Dre did wrong, one thing I can definitely say is that she's running that tribe. I mean, regardless, again, she could vote out next week. They can all turn against her and vote out next week. That certainly is possible. But I just don't see that being. I see her as kind of if I see her as the Shan this season, right? It was supposed to Shan last season. There was only two left. It was her and Ricard. There's only two left. I can see that being the case for sure. I can see it being her and Romeo, or her and Roxroy, whoever, being the only two left if they keep losing. I just see her as kind of the power player of that tribe. She has that little advantage as well from the first episode as well. So there's definitely some positives there. I definitely think she is in a good spot as far as in her tribe. But obviously once the numbers get whittled down, who knows where everybody ends up. But so far, I think she's not doing a bad job. I just think I don't think it was the right move this week to get rid of Swathi. I think they should have got rid of Tori. But as far as everybody pretty much came to her, and she had good relationships with pretty much everybody. I mean, Tori felt comfortable talking to her, voting with her again. Romeo voted with her. Roxroy and her are kind of on the outs, but I think if it came down to Roxroy would vote with her as opposed to against her. I think he voted for Tori because he just doesn't like Tori. But either way, I have Dre here at number 2. And finally, the number 1 spot, I'm going to keep High in the number 1 spot. High, not that he went to tribal council or anything like that. Nothing really changed with him. So I'm not really going to bump him down or anything like that. And he really didn't have much of an episode. He wasn't really too featured in it. But one thing I will say he did really, really well is the whole thing with Daniel and Chanel and Mike and his lines. Obviously, when Daniel kind of blew up his own game and blew up, Chanel and everything, I don't see them being able to work together now, right? I mean, so they kind of fractured the lines. So he's got Lydia. Lydia's his number 1. But now I think he has a choice of, do I want to work with Chanel? Do I want to work with Daniel? Do I want to work with Mike? Personally, I take Mike because Mike's not very good at the game. He's loyal. So I bring in Mike, and I'm like, all right, it's Mike and myself and Lydia to the end, or at least to the end of this tribe, and then you vote out Daniel and Chanel, easily. Probably Chanel, because I think Chanel's a better player. I think that's kind of the best way to go for him. But the thing is now he has options, and that's really the key right now. I think he has options. He can go kind of whichever way he wants. And it's a 2-person, unless the only way that he and Lydia don't make it out of this trial, let's say, or one of them gets voted out next, is if all 3 of the other people work together. And after what just happened, I just don't see it. Plus, he didn't really solidify with anybody, but he kind of talked to all of them and was like, hey, I think we can work together. I still want to work with you, blah, blah. And mostly went with Mike, and then in the confessional, he was talking about how he didn't really want to work with Daniel and Chanel. But I think, again, it wouldn't be a bad idea to keep them, all close. Be like, oh, yeah, no big deal. Daniel, I understand, blah, blah. And, hey, Chanel, I know what Daniel's problem is, blah, blah, and just kind of keep them, hey, I'm with you, and kind of pit the other ones against each other, keep a wedge between them, kind of like Tori did in the Blue Tribe this week. But I think, really, I do really think that Chanel and Daniel, I think there's definitely a very fractured relationship at this point. And so unless all 3 of them can work together, nobody can touch High or Lydia. Because they need all 3 of them to vote together. Again, something crazy happened, lose your vote, blah, blah, blah. Mike still can't vote even too. So that really hurts. So now what you definitely do, if I'm High, I'm definitely bringing in Mike. Mike can't vote, but you keep him kind of floating out there in the ether, make him an alliance member, and then you get tell Chanel or Daniel vote for the other one, and then you can do whatever you want. You get those 2 voting for each other. As long as they're not voting together against you, it won't be a tie. and and then eventually once they're gone, you can do what you want with Mike because he can't vote anyways. So I think that's kind of the best move, and I think he's set up really, really well to kind of pick up the pieces. I thought he was doing well. He had that advantage from the beginning as well, and I really didn't know how to feel about him, but the last couple weeks he's really come along and been doing well, and he's set up particularly well for going forward right now. So I think he's right now the player of the week again, just not based on what I think he did this week, but kind of that he has the potential to do a lot coming up, and I think he's set himself up pretty well this week based on how things have, how he handled the immediately come back from tribal council, not really being like, hey, not really definitively picking a side, but kind of letting them all kind of, butt heads and create that friction between them to make them not want to work together. So the only way that they lose is if it's a 2-2 tie because Mike can't vote, and that would require both Chanel and Daniel working together again. And neither one of them really. The good thing that Hai did was just kind of stir the pot, right? Let their bickering continue, and not let them get back on the same page. And so as long as you let them get back on the same page, you're golden. So that's why I think Hai's still player of the week, based on very little things. Little things they did this week, but not even a ton really to go off of. Because again, it was another week of not a ton of great gameplay. But I think Hai's kind of just, if you're looking at it from the bird's eye view, I think he's got the best spot right now of anybody. And it's still very, very early, so that can definitely change. And I'm sure it will. So be sure to subscribe to us anything. You can look at our Facebook page, facebook.com/Pavement Row Productions. You can email the show directly, pavementrowproductions@gmail.com. You can like our Facebook page, subscribe, tell your friends, share the post, and let us know what you think. Definitely try to get some guests on the next couple weeks as well. So be sure to check all that out. And thanks for listening. Thanks for interacting with the show. And for now, I got nothing else for you because the tribe has spoken.